So, carrying on from our conversation yesterday regarding social media managers, I'd like to look at another question which is directly tied into what we answered yesterday about the role of the social media manager and whether it is their job to make sure that they bring in sales. So, today's question that I'd like to tackle is whether the social media manager has the power to make a client pay. And this is me just riffing off of a question that I saw on Instagram. And so I think it's an interesting question for us to tackle here on the forum because there are a number of us who try to boost our businesses by using very capable social media managers at that. Might I add, because I've seen people who try to manage their Instagram handles by themselves, wedding planners, photographers, what have you, and just bringing in someone into the mix whose sole responsibility is to make sure that posts are visible and properly engaged with. I've seen the difference that it can make as far as visibility is concerned. But of course, I don't have access to the back end function, so I don't know how profitable those relationships are. In other words, I don't know for sure if bringing in a social media manager means that your profits jump immediately. But I guess there is some tension with out there with social media managers and their employers about the expectations, and it's something that I can talk to firsthand because I have a relative who got employed as a social media manager for an outfit in Abuja, an eatery, and she got the sack in less than a month. And I think that these were some of the tensions behind the whole thing. So, can a social media manager, do they have the power to make your client pay? And the answer to the question is no. But then again, does anyone have the power to make a client pay? And the answer is also no. You cannot compel a client to pay, but you can use proper sales disciplines and sales techniques while you are in the conversation to make sure that you are dealing with someone who not only has a need, but most likely is able to pay for your product or your service in the first place. So that should be the goal right from the get, whether you use social media managers or whether you handle it yourself. But you need to become thoroughly immersed in sales knowledge and, of course, knowledge of your customers so that you can craft the conversation such that you're speaking to the right people who have a need for what it is that you sell or what it is that you produce, but that they can also afford to pay for it. So you can't really compel anyone to pay, but if you structure the conversation right and if you're speaking to the right person, then of course the outcome that we're looking for is that they pay eventually and that they become a happy customer. Now, how do you ensure that you're speaking to someone who has the potential to pay? That is achieved by using what we call, in traditional sales circles, by using what we call qualification frameworks or qualification questions. For those of you who are long-time listeners of the podcast, you're already familiar with a number of frameworks that I've spoken about. But for those of you who are listening for the first time today, let me just go over it and give a quick theory without looking into any specific framework in detail. So, the goal of qualification is to answer a couple of questions. I mean, for you to get the answer to a couple of questions. Who am I speaking with? What are they about? What problem do they have? What vision are they trying to achieve? What are our expectations around money? And let's see, what are the expectations around deliverables? Those sorts of questions. Basically, the sorts of questions that you need to know as a photographer or an event planner or whatever business you're involved in before you can give a reliable quote. Because some of you are of the habit of just throwing over a price sheet when someone reaches out to say how much or are you available. And in fact, if you're using a social media manager without any sales training or without any understanding of the sales function, most likely that is what it is that you're going to resort to. Someone reaches out to say, how much are you available? And then the social media will just send back, here's our price list. In fact, those of you long-term listeners of the podcast will remember that I mentioned the experience about my wife who reached out to a fashion designer. They discussed a few ideas, and then when the issue of money came up, The lady just sent back a 7-page PDF document to my wife with different options about payment. And anyway, it was just a complicated thing. Well, actually, what should have happened was that the fashion designer, after having spoken to my wife and gotten a sense of what it is that she wanted, should have been able to give a tailor-made quote, since she had all the information that she needed, or an option or some options of quotes, so that my wife would be able to pick from, rather than sending over a 5-page price template. So where was I? Okay, I got off track. Okay, qualification. Yes, so that's how you make sure that you're speaking to someone who can indeed pay. So some of the questions that you can use to find out whether you guys are in the ballpark are some questions I've given in the past, like how much have you allocated for, or how much have you budgeted for. Now, some people find this approach too sneaky, especially since the average client is not going to want to reveal whatever it is that he or she has allocated anyway, because they feel like if they say I've allocated 1.5, you will want to charge them up to that maximum 1.5, and nobody wants to be overcharged. So there are other ways of going about it if you're not comfortable with the what have you allocated. Another way is to make a presentation directly to say, okay, Mr. Customer, okay, first of all, you have to give a recap before you go into these sorts of things. So you give a recap. Okay, so Mr. Customer, if I understand correctly, okay, let's stick to the wedding scenario. If I understand correctly, you're getting married on the 1st of January. You want, okay, let's say you are a wedding planner. Okay, let's use a wedding planner now. So you're getting married on the 1st of January. If I understand correctly, it's going to be at so and so hall. We're looking at 1,500 guests, and you want my services to cover 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't want it to cover 5 and 6, but you want it to cover 7 and 8. Does that sound about right? The client is going to say, yes, that sounds about right, and then you move on to the next thing. But if they say, no, we've missed something, then you have to go back and make sure that you run the qualification process all over again, to be sure that you've asked the right questions, to be sure that you understand what it is that they're aiming for, so that you can give a proper quote. Then when you're done with that, you can start off by saying that usually, you can start off by saying, my happiest clients usually pay X, Y, Z when we're looking at this sort of scenario. How does that sound to you? So that is a direct question that prompts an immediate response, to which they're going to say, X, Y, Z, are you crazy? That is expensive. Now, if they say that, I already have podcast episodes where how you should deal with those sorts of things, when people are incredulous or try to give you a low ball offer. But let's just assume for this purpose that that is not what they say, and that they say, well, it sounds about right, but it's a little higher than what it is that I had in mind. Now, the good thing is, with this kind of response, you now have more information to push the conversation forward. Now, I'm not going to take this scenario and run it to its logical conclusion, because it's too much guessing here and there. And besides, if you happen to be at any of the in-person sessions that I handle with different outfits here in Abuja, then if you have a specific question, it's something that we can run through, so that you can see, so we can map out the decision tree, and then you see how the different options that are available and how the conversations might go. But the bottom line, what I'm trying to put out here is that you cannot force anybody to pay. The best that you can do is ask questions to get all the information that you need to issue a reliable quote, and then ask questions to be sure that you guys are in the same ballpark. Because if you're not in the same ballpark, you can't make progress. There's nothing that you can do to make a 150k person pay 500k. If what they're used to is to pay 100k for your product or your service, then and for you your minimum order is 500k or 600k, that's a tall order. So you want to find out early on in the transaction who you're dealing with, what money expectations are, so you know whether you can push the process forward. Because if they're a 150k person, but for you minimum orders are 200, then it's doable. You can Sell on value and stretch it is doable, but to move from 150 to 600, that's quite a stretch. So you need to know from the beginning, is there hope, or if there's no hope, and so you can move along and speak to another potential customer who is going to be worth your while. So that should be the goal of the whole process. It's all about qualifying, or rather qualification, qualification. Who am I talking to? What problems do they have? What problems do they want to be solved? What vision are they trying to work towards? Is it something that I can fulfill? Because there are times when somebody comes and meets you, like in my own case, with my wedding photography practice, if it turns out that they want the highly advanced Photoshop stuff, that's not what I can do. So regardless of whether we are on the same page when it comes to money or not, the best that I can do is to be upfront with them and tell them that I don't work that way. It's not my specialty, but I can refer you to ABC or XYZ, who has a skill set that is much more suited to what it is that you want. Now, some people, when they do that, they pass it along and they want a percentage, a referral fee, or a cut. I'm going to leave that up to you to do the business the best way that you can. But qualification is a big deal in pushing the conversation forward and trying to get people to pay at the end of the day. And that's one of the reasons why qualification frameworks are something that we keep on discussing ad nauseum on the podcast. And you're still going to hear more about it as we record future episodes. So, yeah, your social media manager does not have the power to make anybody pay, and neither do you. So just do second best, which is make sure that we have the right money expectations in the first place, and then we can move things along. And if you had listened to the last episode and you're listening to this, thank you for hanging around so far. But I hope this also makes you appreciate the difficulties that I've been talking about trying to set the right expectations. Social media managers are trained in different things. How to create engaging copy, engaging content, boosting, sharing, promotion, getting people to like, to comment, to share. And it's not quite the same skill set as moving the conversation forward when somebody calls up to say, how much is XYZ? Or someone sends you a DM to say, are you available on December 31st? So it's a different skill set. And so if you want somebody to manage your social media and you're looking at sales as the end result, you're actually better off, speaking to a sales consultant like me, so we can craft up something to train the people that you already have working for you. Or you look for someone who has skills in business development, because business development people are much more rounded, and so they're going to have all these skills. How do you get people top of the funnel? Looking at you, Instagram, Twitter, however it is that you choose to promote yourself, website and social media. And then when people email, call, or DM, how do you move the conversation forward so that the people pay? Yeah, so that is more of a sales rep or a business development function. So if that's what you have in mind, then don't be looking for social media managers, but rather keep your eyes out for sales reps and business development people. Although in Nigeria, we just generally call them marketers. So I guess if you see anyone on Instagram or you run into someone who says, I'm a marketer, I guess you can start the conversation and then try to figure out that, okay, when this person says marketing, what does he mean exactly? Does it tally with what I want when I say I need a marketer? And then you take the conversation from there. So qualification. You can't force them to pay. Just make sure that at best you guys have the same monetary expectations, expectations around money and value, as well as everything else. So thank you very much for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based sales consultant and event media professional Tabishima Ayede. Thanks for your time and attention. I'll catch you guys at the next recording.